At some point, preparing for this trial, did you come talk to me and share some text messages that you had shared with your mother?
Yes, sir.
And the pictures up there, are you familiar with whose phone that is?
Yes, sir. It is my phone.
Your phone? Okay. And, Your Honor, for the record, we don't, I can't seem to find the printed version of this, so by agreement, we're going to do a late filing of the exhibits, the physical exhibits. I've got it here on the digital copy, but, okay, so.
No objection, Your Honor, to
So
that.
the paper copy will be admitted as late file exhibit 40?
Yeah, and it'll be 2 pages. It'll be 2 pages.
That will be screenshots of the text messages on Mr. Leonard's phone?
Yes, Your Honor. So, of course, the jury can read, but it's your messages. So, who's writing here on January 17, Sunday of 2021 at 10:37 p.m.?
The blue text is my text.
That's you? And what's happened that day? What, put us a time frame as to what you just testified to.
This is the night after Isaac's birthday party, as my mom has been going home.
Okay. Okay. I'll just read what you wrote to your, is this to your mother?
Yes.
Okay, read that, please.
Hey, hope you're having a great evening. I need you to know that I'm really upset that you broke your promise to me and the CPS woman that you would not that you would not open your door and call 911 for Annette. She could have killed you, and it is unacceptable that you would throw away your life so carelessly.
Okay, and does that go to the next page?
Yes. If not for yourself,
Let me make it bigger. Okay.
if not for yourself, you should at least think of your family, which values your life and safety. I feel that you have been continually devaluing yourself for your ostensibly named friends to the point that your own life does not matter to you. I hate it. It makes me worry. It is not okay. If she comes to tomorrow or tonight or at any other time, call the police. Do what is right, please. If you won't do it for yourself, at least do it for your family, for me.
And what was her response?
She was carrying a tote of the kids' things, or I would not have. I told her not to come back till Tuesday, and if she did, I would call the police as instructed. I promise you I will.
And then the next message, what day
Call
is
me
that?
back ASAP, please, is as I am trying to get a hold of her Monday, as I am going to ETSU to pay for my classes. I'm trying to make sure she was okay. See her for lunch that day. Could not get a hold of her. Those that text message was the last thing I got to say to my mom.
Where'd she wind up?
The Johnson City Medical Center.
Did you go that day, that Monday? To the
I did.
hospital?
I
Was COVID still messing up people being able to see patients?
Yes, it was a nightmare. I went to her house first to try to see maybe she was asleep. She was talking about pulling an all-nighter at the party because she was trying to prep for classes. And when I arrived at her home, it was surrounded by police vehicles. And I went up to the nearest vehicle, one of the vans, and asked what was going on. And they told me my mother was in the hospital and it didn't look good.
Of course, they didn't know it was your mom, did they?
I identified myself, told them that was my mother's home, Robin Leonard.
Were you afraid something happened to her?
Yes,
So did you go to the hospital?
immediately.
Where was she in? Where was she in there?
When I arrived, I went into the emergency room and they told me that she was being operated on, that they didn't know what the prognosis would be.
Did you get to see her?
After surgery, she got a hospital room in the ICU, and due to the COVID protocols, only one of us was allowed to be with my mom for most of those days, minus the final.
One at a time, or just one person?
Just one person.
Who was that?
That was me. And so for 11 days, I sat in a hospital room with my mother, read to her, hoped that she would open her eyes, talked to her, hoped for the best, and around 8 or 9 days in, they had an MRI image of her mind, and when a brain has had a stroke or an injury of some sort, the image is of the damaged tissue that's no longer reactive is black. And it was an enormous black spot in the middle of her brain. And she had continually been losing reflexes and motor function, and there was no way she would recover, in the opinions of the medical professionals. And I had to make the decision, because her body was still there. Yes, it was being assisted by machines, but I had to make the decision to end her life.
Did you have other family there?
Not when I made that decision.
Did you have brothers, sisters, that kind of stuff?
She has 2 sisters.
Okay. Were they?
Brother-in-law, who was always like a brother, by flesh and blood.
All these folks at the hospital too, during all this time?
I will never forget, there was a nurse named Joe Summers, and I don't think I would have made it without him. He had previously, a few months before, had to make the tough decision to end his mother's life as well. And it was, I don't think I could have asked for a better caretaker for my mom at that moment.
So, when you made that decision, was that at the prompting of physicians coming to you and discussing bringing up end-of-life procedures, as they call it?
Yes. So, because I had been there every day and I watched her condition, and I talked to the neurologists that came and went, and I talked to every single doctor and nurse and got as much information as I could every single day. We actually had a text group that I made that I would send out updates in, and I would just try to grab as much information as I could. And it was, I believe, day 3 of being in the hospital that they kind of told me what a timeline would look like, of if things went well or if things started to go for worse, and where to go from there. And from that day onward, I was just hoping for the best. Any moment of flicker of activity, whether it was her eyes having a blink or her foot twitching or anything of that nature, I was just hoping and praying that that was signs of improvement. But as we went, her body stopped being able to regulate her temperature. They had to put a water blanket on her that could control her internal temperature, and she started to lose more and more of her reflexes. And that's when the doctors pulled me aside and said, things have gotten much worse. And I had to make a decision.
So when you made that decision, they go ahead and do that, or is there like a time frame?
So So there are several steps to the process that we took. My mom was an organ donor for one, and so we needed to talk to the organ donation people. There was also what level of care she will have in palliative care, which is end of life care. What kind of, if she would have a DNR, those kinds of questions were the first ones that came up. And what I had planned in that moment was to try and get her sisters to be able to come to see her before her life ended, and also allow her friends to come see her. And the hospital bent protocol probably as far as they could, and we had on day 9 and 10, my aunts both got to come, and then on day 11, more family and friends came to say their goodbyes.
Day 11, was that January 29?
Yes.
And tell us about how it ended.
That's probably the hardest moment of my life. She was allowed to be an organ donor. So with that, there are certain procedures that they have to go through. We were transported down into one of the larger waiting rooms near the operating rooms. And at that time, they started to take her off of the breathing machines and other life support. And for whatever reason, maybe they were concerned with putting too many drugs in her system because she was about to donate organs, but I watched my mother's eyes bulge out of her head as she gasped for air, knowing she wasn't there mentally, but watching her physical reaction, where her swollen face from all of the fluid retention looked like a bullfrog, and her eyes just were burned into my brain. Just seeing that, and then one quick moment they administered extra drugs, and she went still.
From the time they pulled that breathing tube, how long was it before she died?
She was a fighter, and I want to say it was a good 5 minutes of waiting for her heart to stop. The electrical signals were still pulsing through, and they had to think that the muscles had probably stopped, but she was still fighting. So they just decided to declare it, because more likely than not, her heart was done.
Okay.
But she was still going.
If you can pardon the court while I try to fish up an exhibit 2. What I'll play.
But exhibit 2 are 911 calls from January 18th of 2021.
And specifically out of exhibit 2, what I'll be playing, Mr. Leonard, is the one that says process _0118-2109.0 2956. Mr. Leonard, as you listen to this, I'm going to ask you, can you identify the voices that you hear in this call? Okay.
Yes, sir.
How many voices did you hear, sir?
I heard two.
Who were they?
They were my mother and Annette Harvey.
You're familiar with Annette Harvey's voice?
Yes, sir.
Is the person with that voice in this courtroom today?
Yes, sir.
Can you point to her?
Right there.
The record will reflect that Mr. Leonard has identified the defendant as counsel.
I may have a picture show you. Can you identify that person?
That's my mom. That is Robin Leonard.
We would like that admitted as the next numbered exhibit
Exhibit 41.
and published to the jury at this time.
Exhibit 41, photographs of Robin Leonard and Mr. Alexander Leonard that will be marked to the county. All jurors have seen Exhibit 41. Any further direct
Nothing.
cross-examination?
Thank you.
Alexander, you are a fine young man and a valuable young man.
Thank you.
You have described your mother as a highly energetic person.
That's one way to put it. I would say she was a highly driven person, personally.
A highly driven person. I am guessing that you also would remember your mother as having quite a powerful personality.
Absolutely.
All right. You described her as an extrovert.
Yes.
You described yourself as an introvert.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but I don't see that. You communicate extremely well.
Well, just because I am not empowered by social situations does not mean I have forgotten how to speak. I had a very good example for one.
I understand that. You seem like a very highly intelligent person to me. Your mother suffered a heart attack. I don't know exactly when that was in her career, but it had an impact on her. Is that correct?
Yes.
It slowed her down a little bit. Thank.
I would not say that it slowed her down. I would say more so that she reevaluated her priorities, and as anyone would in her situation, and she made decisions that better affected her own life at that moment.
Right. Well, COVID came along. It affected her life considerably.
Absolutely.
It isolated her to the house to a large extent, did it not?
Yes.
It resulted in her having teaching courses online.
Yes.
And now you've described to us that she had blood thinners and stents and blood sugar problems and other health problems. You must have been concerned with your mother's, honestly, alcohol use.
I think anybody would be reasonably concerned with anyone's habits that would negatively affect. I was more concerned about her smoking than her alcohol consumption. She was a daily smoker. She was not a daily drinker.
All right. I was going to ask you a lot about that, but I think I'll move past that for you. You weren't around your mother every day, were you?
Not every day.
Right. And when we got down to this drama, if you will, for lack of a better word, between her and Annette, you really were not privy to all that took place between them, were you?
I tried to help her with parental boundaries, right? There are certain things that I don't think a kid should know about their mother. That being said, I knew more than most children would ever know. I remember a 4th of July party that she had where some of her students that had managed to graduate that previous semester came by to celebrate. And I remember her talking about the fact that she wanted to purchase a sex swing. I would say that under the things that a child typically knows about their mother, knowing what they want to purchase for the bedroom is not one of those things. So I would say I knew more about my mother than the average Joe.
Okay. Well, did you know that did your mother talk to you about her acceptance of and encouragement of Annette Harvey's fixation with some wild story about kidnappers and pedophiles and this kind of thing? Listen just a minute. Did your mother share that with you? Did she tell you that she was sharing that obsession with her friend?
Do you want the full?
Yes. I want to hear what you say.
I shared in that.
You shared in it also.
I believed in my mother so much, in
Yes.
her reasonable judgment. It was not until the moment that we were in the car together that I began to question the stories that I had been told.
And the moment you're talking about was the Friday night when a police officer had witnessed what he did and had followed protocol because he was concerned that she was having some kind of an emotional breakdown, and sent her by ambulance to the hospital in Johnson City. You're talking about that night, aren't you?
Yes, I am talking about that night. And yet still, while I had my doubts at that moment, I still believed to a certain extent. Not for the fact that, and this is not to attest to my mom's credibility, but to Annette's, because she was a part of my life. She was someone I cared about. I cared deeply about her and her daughter and everyone else involved. And if my mom has one mistake that she has made in her life, it's that she loves so deeply. And if that is a genuine mistake, then I am also guilty of that crime.
I understand that. And the feelings that you have generated over the years for Annette, you never believed anything other than she shared those same feelings for you, did you?
Absolutely.
And for your mother.
Absolutely. However, her expression of her love, her expression of her, I'm trying to find a very good word for it to go with this, but her mannerisms and her way of dealing with things and doing things has always been not tolerable to everyone. My mom was an extremely tolerant person, and that's how she could get past a lot of those. When Annette was living with us in the house in Bluff City, her child Amanda bullied me as a little toddler, because that's what toddlers do. And Annette was also not the most tolerable person, and my grandmother wanted them out.